goal perhaps is to aim for something, like to create an idea of success in your mind that's so far out there that it's almost impossible to achieve. You know how ridiculous that is? We're gonna colonize Mars? We're gonna send people up there, get a city going, we're gonna terraform the whole planet, it sounds almost impossible. So what are the chances that Musk and SpaceX are actually going to be successful at that? Probably zero. But whoever comes after Musk, whoever stands on his shoulders and what his companies have done and achieved, then maybe they'll be the ones, but they never would have gotten there if SpaceX hadn't tried it. How does every single Disney movie start? With that castle and then the star that shoots across the sky, and it plays that music when you wish upon a star. What are the chances that you're ever going to reach a star? Zero? Yeah, not with that attitude. In other words, you should aim at something that's so far out there that you're not likely to achieve it, but it's something that will keep you busy for the rest of your life, and who knows, maybe you do achieve it. You might be the only person in this classroom who wants to go to Pluto, let's say. You might be the only person in this whole school who wants to go to Pluto. And especially if you're a person who doesn't just want to go there, but you're working on a plan to get there. How many people can you relate to? Yeah. The bigger your goal, the bigger your dream, the loftier your ambition, the fewer people around you that you can actually interact with to discuss that. But great minds need a lofty goal to keep themselves occupied. Simple minds are really easily amused, really easily entertained. Great minds are not easily entertained. In fact, you probably have a hard time. If you have a great mind, you probably have a very difficult time being entertained. Because you realize that every minute you spend being entertained is not a minute that you're spending on something great or something lofty. That you're not using that moment to reach that star that we're supposed to wish upon. We would find ourselves a success if we got into, I don't know, NYU or some college. And like, I'm successful, I got into college. Or how many of us would say, dope, I got into college and that's going to be a stepping stone towards my success. In other words, I've got some big plan in mind and I'm working towards that. And every little thing that's along the way that you pick up that's good, well, that's good. It isn't bad. And when people say like, oh, money isn't everything, yeah, it isn't everything, but man, it's a lot. It's a lot. SpaceX wouldn't be working towards colonizing Mars if they didn't have the money to do it. And so it was necessary for Musk to sell PayPal so he could use that money to start Tesla, so that he could become the wealthiest man in the world, so he could use that money towards SpaceX. It's this whole plan, man. It isn't just like one success after another success after another one. Those are checkpoints on the way to it. Tesla was designed to was designed to earn a bunch of money that could then be used to go to Mars, because he's looking way bigger scheme. A lot of people, we talk about like a typical mind is thinking about a success thing, like you get to, I don't know, accepted to college or whatever. It's like, dude, I was successful. If that's the scope of your success, that's gonna be problematic for you in the long run. But instead, if you've got this one really big long-term plan, and again, that's not for everybody. This is not me saying everyone should have that. Maybe you should have that kind of a long-term plan in your own life, not to colonize Mars perhaps, but what for you would compose a successful life. And you can't know, of course, long-term, but from the spot that you're living right now, if you saw yourself doing X, Y, or Z, if you saw yourself in the position X, Y, or Z 30 years from now, what would that look like? What would that successful thing be like? It's really hard to think about, I know, 30 years out. Maybe you think like 5 years out, but and then try to figure out what course of a life that you'd want to be at. But it's not, it isn't impossible though to just stop and go, if I were to die today, would I feel like I was accomplished? Not accomplished for a teenager, but accomplished in terms of a life. And if not, it's a good thing to ask yourself, okay, so what would I have to have accomplished by today in order to feel like I was a success? And then start planning that thing out. Okay, so by the time I die, by the time I end this life, I want to be able to say I did X, Y, and Z, or I achieved X, Y, and Z. Figure out what those things are, and then you can start working towards them. Because as soon as you start working towards them, one thing's gonna happen. I think you're gonna probably realize that the goals of your life don't have to be so incredibly far off into the future, which means that you might have an idea for success now, but then you realize how achievable it is. So then you're gonna maybe plan out something a little bit further beyond that, because you're going to see that it is possible. Because the goal perhaps is to aim for something, like to create an idea of success in your mind that's so far out there that it's almost impossible to achieve. You realize how ridiculous that is? We're gonna colonize Mars. We're gonna send people up there, get a city going. We're gonna terraform the whole planet. It sounds almost impossible. So what are the chances that Musk and SpaceX are actually going to be successful at that? Probably zero. But whoever comes after Musk, whoever stands on his shoulders and what his companies have done and achieved, then maybe they'll be the ones, but they never would have gotten there if SpaceX hadn't tried it. And this is a message that doesn't come from me. This, at the beginning of every Disney movie, has every single Disney movie start with that castle and then the star that shoots across the sky, and it plays that music when you wish upon a star. What are the chances that you're ever going to reach a star? 0? Yeah, not with that attitude. 0.0001%. So there's a chance. In other words, you should aim at something that's so far out there that you're not likely to achieve it, but it's something that will keep you busy for the rest of your life. And who knows, maybe you do achieve it. If not you, wouldn't it have been great if someone in the generation prior to us had that same vision, whose shoulders we could have stood on, and then maybe we would have been the ones to reach it? And so when I talk about that difference between great minds and typical minds, there's nothing wrong with either of these. A typical mind, what kind of things do we talk about in terms of success? Enough money to be comfortable, a house, maybe a family. And so I wonder how many of us in here can talk about those things. The desire for a house, the desire for a family, desire for financial security. Probably most people that you come across, because most people are typical. So the things that consume a typical mind are typical. You can talk about those things. If any of you are in here right now and I'm talking about those things, you're like, financial security, family, no, dude. I want to go to Pluto. In other words, you might be the only person in this classroom who wants to go to Pluto, let's say. You might be the only person in this whole school who wants to go to Pluto. And especially if you're a person who doesn't just want to go there, but you're working on a plan to get there. How many people can you relate to? Yeah. The bigger your goal, the bigger your dream, the loftier your ambition, the fewer people around you that you can actually interact with to discuss that. And if you find yourself surrounded by a bunch of people who share the exact same goal, one of two things is happening. Either it's a typical mind, or you're surrounded by, I guess, typical minds, but not the good kind. Like there's a good kind of typical mind, by which we just mean like general population. And then there's the other typical mind of people who want to brag about what they're going to do, but they take no steps to getting there. Like I was saying, the person who posts about how they're moving in silence, even though they're posting about it. And people would talk about how they're going to stack cash someday, but they've got no means to do it. They're not developing themselves to be good, or better yet good, exceptional in any one thing. Like if you're a person who's planning on making a bunch of money someday, and right now you are absolutely studying the hell out of how to invest money, and maybe you don't even care if you graduate from high school, that might not even be necessary for your goal. In fact, the truth is it's probably not necessary for most people's goals. If your goal is how to figure out how to get a little bit of money, and with a little bit of money, make it into a lot of money, and you're just studying the hell out of the stock market, that's not really a typical mind. That starts to push you into the area of a great mind. Because what makes you a great mind is not just that you have, it's not only that you have a lofty goal, but great minds need a lofty goal to keep themselves occupied. Simple minds are really easily amused, really easily entertained. Great minds are not easily entertained. In fact, you probably have a hard time. If you have a great mind, you probably have a very difficult time being entertained. Because you realize that every minute you spend being entertained is not a minute that you're spending on something great or something lofty. that you're not using that moment to reach that star that we're supposed to wish upon. And so, whichever of these things you are, it's not good or bad. It just is. It just is. For some reason, we think like if you want typical things, there must be something wrong with you. No, there's absolutely nothing wrong with a simple life. And you can know that. Because how many people do you know who are older who just say, you know what, I'm content with my simple life. Just want my simple life. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if this is you and you have a great mind and you're aiming at something really lofty, you better get used to solitude. You better get used to solitude. Not just because there aren't a lot of people around to talk to about your great ideas, your lofty ideas, but also you're going to have to spend a lot of time on your own because it takes time to develop great ideas. If you're constantly surrounded by people, then that means you're constantly surrounded by distractions. If you're constantly surrounded by an internet connection, that means you're constantly surrounded by distractions. In order for you to develop ideas and really plan and focus your mind on something, you've got to be away from distractions. And this is one of those things that, like, any of you guys ever go to Cowles Mountain, any chance? Cowles Mountain? Anybody ever go hiking at Cowles Mountain? Yeah, if you ever go there in the summer, it's annoying because a lot of people go there. It's the highest peak in San Diego. So a lot of people go up there and they like to post pictures themselves on Instagram, whatever, talking about how, hashtag made it, at the top, posing. But when you get there, especially in the summer, and you look around, it's getting in there is tough. A lot of people go there in the summer. I remember going there one time, and there was road construction going on, and I was thinking to myself, you shouldn't have come, dude. This is a bad idea. And it was warm, it was hot. Road construction was going on. You're all jammed up. I remember there being a person walking on the sidewalk who kept passing me. My car would finally pull forward, and then I would stop and get stuck in traffic again. This person would catch up, and they'd walk right past you. These pedestrians are going faster than you. When you finally park, and you end up sometimes having to park like way down the road, you walk all the way up, and then you walk up the mountain. And maybe as you're coming up the mountain, you see these people, you gotta kind of like step around people, and maybe start getting annoyed, like, if you're moving slow, stay to the right, whatever. But then when you finally get to the top, you breathe, take a minute, and look around. And what you'll see is, from that high place, looking down on the city, that there's almost like a music or an order to the chaos that you just walked through. Like you see the construction, sure, but then from where you're standing, you can see all the cars just kind of filling in where they're supposed to go. You see the pedestrians, you see the traffic flowing as it is, you see the turn signals and all that exactly as they should be on time every 45 seconds or so. You see the people parking, everything looks like order. It's like if you ever go up to a tall building and you look over the edge out the window, it looks the same. Down when you're in the middle of the city, all that chaos, all that honking, all the cars, all the smog. But from the perspective of a high place, you can look down and see that there is an order to it. And it's an order that you can't really comprehend when you're in the middle of it. And that's why every great religion starts with a person who's on top of a mountain. No great religion starts in room 1207. No great religion starts in a car as someone's driving down the street surrounded by traffic. All of the world's great religions start with a person who separates themselves from society, goes into solitude, climbs a mountain where no one can reach them, and then they can look down at the world and see the order in which it is, and then start to process, and then things start to make sense of why they are the way that they are. Now, once you understand why things are the way that they are, now you can start moving in realistic ways. As lofty as it is, as impossible as it might sound, you're at least moving within reality to achieve something unreal, to achieve something supernatural almost, and certainly to achieve something metaphysical. But you only get that clarity through solitude. Otherwise, you're distracted. Otherwise, there's a bunch of influence, people around you influencing you, talking to you, distracting you. I can't tell you how, some of you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Somebody might walk up to you and go, hey, so what you doing? And you might say, working on this thing, trying to make this deadline, trying to get this thing done. What is it? It's just this homework thing. I got to get this essay done by 10 o'clock because I have to email it by then. What's it about? They don't even mean to distract you. They don't even mean to be in the way, but people just are. So you have to separate yourself because that gives you the time to be something great. Otherwise, if you're just hanging out with typical, that's what you absorb. That's what you become, like a sponge. So the more powerful and original your mind, the more you're going to incline towards this. And notice how you're inclining. You're not just leaning towards it, you're inclining to go up towards. So the more greatness you want to achieve, the more you're going to have to seek that within yourself, separate yourself from people. Maybe it's to walk around Kimball Park by yourself, maybe. Maybe it's to walk to the top of Cowles Mountain, especially to go there at night. Maybe it's to go to the beach, but far away from where everybody else is. Some place in your life that you can kind of, retreat to. Separate yourself. Because when you separate yourself, you can finally fully become what you are. Questions? Comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Dope. Happy Monday.